Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Dear student teachers, I am Rashid Salim with lecture number 18. Lecture number 18 is really very interesting because it is about reading riddles and jokes. Now, whenever we are learning a foreign language or a second language, it is important to understand, it is important to listen and be able to speak in that language. But understanding jokes, understanding what is funny in a language is not easy. But it is really very important for learning a language. If we can understand humor in a language, it means that we are quite well versed in it. It's easy to listen to the news and you will understand it, because usually the news has familiar vocabulary and we already have some background information about it. If it is a continuing news that is going on for few days. But what about jokes? Understanding jokes actually is important, because if you understand language, only then you can really appreciate why it is funny and how it is funny. In fact, the most difficult to understand a language, the most difficult kind of genre is riddles and jokes. And at the same time, it is really very interesting to share jokes and to look at riddles. And I think as good teachers, probably sometimes you use riddles in your classes. Riddles को आप उर्दू में पहेली कह सकते हैं. So it's something, a question, a brain teaser that makes your students think, and normally you don't have the right answer for these riddles. Instead you have an answer which is funny. It looks at the humorous aspect of things. So lecture 18 is really unique in a way, because we haven't done anything like this before, and I'm sure that you would like this lecture very much, because it includes a lot of jokes in it, and it has also food for thought. That means it has a lot of riddles in it that will make you think, and some of them will actually make you smile as well. So just buckle up and fasten your seat belts, because it's going to be a bumpy flight. Okay, but first we are going to have the review of lecture number 17. In the previous lecture, we learned how to identify types of questions. And if you can recall, there are 4 types of questions that we discussed. There are yes-no questions, there are WH questions, embedded questions, and tag questions. We actually also looked at 2 different kinds of yes-no questions. We learnt that there are positive yes-no questions and there are negative yes-no questions. We also learned that there are 2 kinds of tag questions. We have different polarity tag questions and same polarity tag questions. Let's look at yes-no questions for a little while. In yes-no questions, when we ask a question in a positive form, like are you coming, we do not expect any particular answer. We do not assume anything. But when we start the question with a negative form, like aren't you coming, we have some underlying expectations or assumptions. And we learned that using the negative form of yes-no questions, can have various underlying functions, and as students it is important to identify those functions. Okay, we also learned how to form appropriate questions, and for that we learned various question words, and in particular we looked at two special question words, that is who and what. And if you can recall, these were special question words because we needed a different form when we were seeking information about a person as a subject and about a person as an object of a sentence. Similarly, we use what differently if we are seeking information about things as a subject and about things as an object of a sentence. I hope you can follow that. Now we move on. In the last lecture we also learned how to use appropriate intonation patterns. This is really important, and we should learn intonation for not merely for questions, but in fact in order to improve our speaking skills, in order to be really clear, we need to learn these intonation patterns, and in future we will talk about them again sometimes whenever we can afford. Hey, who are you? I am funny. Funny? You don't look funny. No, my name is Funny. What kind of name is that? It's funny, isn't it? Yeah, it is funny. I think so. But people don't have such names. Why are you called Funny? Well, when I was a little kid, I used to tell jokes, and people called me Funny. Okay, I understand. Now I got it. May I ask you a few questions? Yes, sure, go ahead. Okay, so your name is Funny, is it so? Yes. Do you have any doubts? No, I don't have any doubts. Where are you from? I'm from Texas, USA. Oh, okay, all right. I don't know where it is. What do you do? What do you do for a living? Can't you see I am still young? I am still a student. Okay. You are a student. So, what kind of student are you? I mean, what subjects are you studying? I'm studying maths. Oh, maths. So you must be pretty good in maths. Yes, I am. They call me smart and funny. Oh, good. Very good. I'm an English teacher, but I would like to ask you a few questions to check your arithmetic skills, if you can count well. Are you good at counting? Yes, sure I am. Okay. Now, if I give you 2 rabbits and 2 rabbits and another 2 rabbits, how many rabbits have you got? 7. No, listen carefully again. If I give you 2 rabbits and 2 rabbits and another 2 rabbits, how many rabbits have you got? 7. Let's try it another way. If I give you 2 bottles of Pepsi, 2 more bottles of Pepsi, And another 2 bottles of Pepsi. How many bottles of Pepsi have you got? 6. Good, good. Now I give you 2 rabbits and 2 rabbits and another 2 rabbits. How many rabbits have you got? 7. How on earth do you work out that 3 lots of 2 rabbits is 7? How on earth do you work that out? I've already got 1 rabbit at home. Okay, so you see, maybe you got the joke or not, but it was just one joke, and through this joke we also reviewed some question forms that we had learnt in lecture number 17. We are teachers, we are not performers, and it's difficult for us to do such gimmicks, but as teachers, sometimes it is important, in order to engage our students, in order to involve their attention, we have to do a little drama in the class sometimes. So maybe in this lecture you will learn some techniques for teaching as well as learning English in a fun way. Okay, the objectives of lecture number 18 are that after completing this lecture, you should be able to comprehend riddles, you should be able to understand riddles, you should be able to read funny texts, and you should be able to use puns and idioms. जी ये लास्ट पॉइंट से दोबारा स्टार्ट करेंगे. And you should be able to use puns and idioms in order to understand jokes and funny texts. So let's start. Are you ready? Okay, so here are some riddles for you. Are you ready? Okay, first one. Can you think of a word that changes both number and gender when you add the letter S? Yeah, it might take some time before you can think of it. You have learnt about number and gender. Number is singular and plural. Gender is masculine and feminine. So can you think of a word that changes both number and gender when you add the letter S? Normally when you add the letter S to a word, it only changes the number. It doesn't change the gender. So can you think of a word that changes both number and gender when you add the letter S? So do you give up? Okay, here's the answer. When you change princes, when you add an S to it, it becomes princess. Right? So it changes the number from plural to singular, and it changes the gender from prince to princess. Okay, so now you can imagine that while captivating interest, while creating interest, you can also teach a lot of concepts through it. As an English teacher, you see it has the value of subject teaching as well. Okay, here's another one. Can a kangaroo jump higher than the Saudi Park Tower? Those of you who don't know, Saudi Park Tower is one of the tallest buildings in Blue Area, Islamabad. So it is one of the tall buildings in Blue Area. So my question again is, can a kangaroo jump higher than the Saudi Park Tower? Yeah, it's not easy to answer. Maybe some of you simply say, no, a kangaroo cannot jump higher than the Saudi Park Tower. But if you answer it this way, you are wrong. So what's the right answer? Here it is. Yes, a kangaroo can jump higher than the Saudi Park Tower because Saudi Park Tower cannot jump. Okay, you got the answer? Okay, and now after doing this riddle with your class, you can teach them some grammar points here. I have actually chosen this riddle in order to emphasize its academic value, its value for its instructional value. So what do we learn from this riddle? Can a kangaroo jump higher than the Saudi Park Tower? You should look at jump and higher than. Higher than is a comparative form of adjective. So you compare two things. But you know that when you compare two things, they should have some similarities. Here we are comparing a kangaroo with Saudi Park Tower. A kangaroo is an animal which can jump, whereas the Saudi Park Tower is a building which cannot jump. So we should not use the form higher than. Instead, probably what question we want to ask is, can a kangaroo jump over the Saudi Park Tower? Can a kangaroo jump over the Saudi Park Tower? Probably that would have been the right question, because this question is incorrectly formed, grammatically incorrect. Therefore, the answer is surprising. So I repeat, can a kangaroo jump higher than the Saudi Park Tower? Yes, because Saudi Park Tower cannot jump. I have used this riddle in order to teach comparative forms of degrees, and in order to emphasize the point that we use the comparative forms of adjectives when we compare two things of similar abilities, not an animal with a building. We can compare a person with a person, a car with a car, and so on. Okay, let's move on to the next riddle. Maybe some of you are already thinking of its answer. Why can't a leopard hide? Well, this one actually doesn't give you the option to say that a leopard can easily hide, because it says, why can't a leopard hide? So we are already sure that a leopard cannot hide. You are only to find out the reason why it is so. The answer is because it is spotted. I hope you got why it is funny, and I hope you understand what it means. The answer lies in the word spot. Spot has two meanings. One meaning of spot is like I have spots on my skin here. I have spots on my skin. This is one meaning of spot. Another meaning of spot is to find out. So it is spotted also means because it is found out. So the trick here is, in this answer, when I say because it is spotted, a leopard cannot hide because it is always found out. So something which is found out cannot hide. Okay, is it funny? All right, so you find it really interesting, I'm sure. Let's move on and look at few more riddles. And this time we are going to look at riddles with puns. We have just looked at a riddle that leopards are spotted, and we learnt that the word spot has two meanings. One meaning of spot is like this spot on my skin. Another meaning of spot is to find out. So spot is a noun as well as a verb. As a noun, it is name of a thing. As a verb, it is a name of an action. To find out would be a synonym for it. A pun is a device when we use a word in such a way that more than one meaning is plausible, more than one meaning is possible. Both meanings are valid, and one of them is funny, because apparently we overlook it. So pun is a literary device. It is a device when we use a word in such a way, in such a context, that it has more than one meanings, and one of the meanings might be funny. Okay, now we are going to look at more riddles that have puns in it. And once you have learned some riddles with the puns, you should be able to make such riddles yourself. Okay, so the first riddle is, what has a neck but no head and wears a cap? What has a neck but no head and wears a cap? You might wonder where he wears a cap if he doesn't have a head. Well, he has a neck. So what's the answer? You give up? Okay, let's look at the answer. It's a bottle. A bottle has a neck, you know. In fact, bottleneck is an idiom in English as well. For example, we say that there shouldn't be any bottlenecks in the road. So bottleneck is a place in the road where the traffic gets stuck because the road gets narrow. Okay, and you know what neck of the bottle means. So this riddle is interesting because the word neck has two meanings. One, neck is a part of a body of a person, and the second meaning of neck is a part of the bottle, which looks like the neck, therefore it is called a neck. A bottle does not have a head, but it wears a cap. A cap is its lid, its cover. So it has a cap, it has a neck, but it doesn't have a head. Okay, so you have similar riddles on this page, and I want you to look at the next one, and maybe it will be easier for you to guess it this time. What has an eye but can't see? What has an eye but can't see? Now think of things in English that have an eye, and this use of eye could be idiomatic, it could be a pun. Here is the answer. A needle. A needle has an eye in it. You know, a needle has a point on one side to stitch, and on the other side it has a hole which looks like an eye, and therefore it is called an eye of a needle. Okay, so you learned some expressions through these riddles. You know that a neck of the bottle, and you learned an eye of a needle, right? A needle cannot see, but it has got an eye. Okay, what has two hands and a face, but no arms and legs? What has two hands and a face, but no arms and legs? Okay, you gave up again? I would like you to think about it a little. Take some time, think. Can't think? Alright, here is the answer. It's a clock. You know, a clock has two hands, a small hand and a big hand. A small hand that gives us hours, and a big hand that gives us minutes. So a clock has two hands and a face. A clock has a face because it is circular and it looks like a face, and in English you call it the face of the clock. Okay, so it is a clock. Of course, a clock does not have arms and legs. Maybe a timepiece has legs. Some timepieces because you put them on the table, so they might have legs, and some of them might even have arms, but the wall clock doesn't have arms and legs. Okay, let's move on to the next riddle. What can run but never walks, has a mouth but never talks, has a bed but never sleeps? Like the previous riddles, this one is also an object. It's a thing. Okay, here is the answer. A river. A river runs, but it doesn't walk. A river has a mouth, but it does not talk. And a river has bed. The river bed means the bottom of the river, and mouth of the river is from where the river starts. That's the mouth. And the bottom of the river is called the river bed. So through this riddle you can learn some English expressions. Bed of sea, bed of roses, bed of river, all these have beds. Okay, the next one is easy. If you keep on thinking on the same lines, I hope you will be able to meet the challenge. What has a head and a tail but no body? What has a head and a tail but no body? Oh, very good. I can hear one of you saying a coin. That's the right answer, a coin. A coin has a head and it has a tail. You know, when you toss a coin, you ask head or tail? Right. So if you talk about a Pakistani coin, maybe the figurehead of Quaid-e-Azam is called a head, and on the other side you have the amount of the coin printed, that is called the tail. So a coin has a head and a tail, but it has no body. Okay, good, you are good now. Let's move on to the next riddle. What has ears but can't hear? Okay, think of things that have ears. It's a corn. Corn has ears, right? Okay, the next riddle is, what has a tongue, cannot walk, but gets around a lot? What could it be? It is a shoe. Now you might be wondering, how come a shoe has a tongue? Yes, it has a tongue inside it. You got it? It looks like a tongue. Okay, so it's a little flap inside your boot. When you it's a little flap that is hanging loose like your tongue, and it is between the shoelaces and your feet. Got it? That's called the tongue of a shoe. Okay, so you learned some expressions here. Neck of a bottle, eye of a needle, face of a clock or hands of a clock, bed of the river, river mouth, and a river runs, head and tail of a coin, ear of corn, and a tongue of a shoe. Okay, so with these riddles, and you have puns, and you also have idiomatic use of English. Okay, now in order to teach vocabulary, spelling, punctuation, we also have some word riddles. And for English teachers, this will be interesting to use such word riddles in your own language classes. But here we are going to use them in order to learn language. Okay, so these are easy. I want you to answer them this time. First one is, I know a word of letters 3. Add 2 and fewer, there will be. What is the word? So it's a word that has 3 letters in it, and if you add 2 letters to it, there will be fewer. What is the word? The right answer is few. When you add two letters to this F-E-W-E-R, when you add two letters to it, it will become fewer. Got it? All right, thank you. Okay, we'll move ahead. What word looks the same upside down and backwards? So if you turn it upside down and if you turn it back to front, like the mirror image, it looks the same. Whether you turn it upside down or whether you turn it from left to right, back to front, it would look the same. The answer is swims. Okay, if you turn it upside down and if you look at the mirror image, it will look the same. Isn't it interesting? Okay. Now, what 8-letter word has one letter in it? Confusing? Mind-boggling? What 8-letter word has one letter in it? You might be wondering, if it is an 8-letter word, how can it have one letter in it? Just think, and you will find the answer. Yes, it's the other letter. Remember the pun? So we are talking about envelope. The word envelope has 8 letters in it, and when you post a letter, you put one letter inside the envelope. Okay, got it? Very good. Okay, what word becomes shorter when you add 2 letters to it? This should be easier because you did the first one, so this shouldn't be difficult. What word becomes shorter when you add 2 letters to it? Normally when you add 2 letters to something, the word becomes longer. But what word becomes shorter when you add 2 letters to it? Yes, you are right, the word short. When you add 2 letters ER to it, it becomes shorter. What is the only word in English language that ends in MT? It is dreamt. Although the Americans would like to call it as dreamed, but the irregular form of dream in English, British English, is dreamt. Okay, how do you spell hard water with only 3 letters? Now again, you see you are asked to spell a phrase with only 3 letters, but this phrase has got 9 letters in it. So here is the answer. Ice. Ice means hard water. Okay, what is in seasons, seconds, centuries and minutes, but not in decades, years and days? It's the letter N. You have N in seasons, you have N in seconds, N in centuries and N in minutes. But you don't have the letter N in decades, years or days. Didn't know it before? Okay. Now I think you can take these riddles to your own classes, especially if you are a language teacher, and you would find that your class would become really very interesting. Okay, what English word has 3 consecutive double letters? Can you think of an English word that has 3 consecutive double letters in it? Here is the answer. Bookkeeper. Bookkeeper. So it has BOOKKEEPER. So 3 consecutive double letters. Double O, double K, double P. Sorry, double E. All right. So through these word riddles, you learned some new words, I'm sure. Okay, here are a few more riddles, and this time the riddle is identification riddle, and it asks us about its identity. And these kind of riddles are good for teaching vocabulary, for teaching concepts. I get wet when drying, I get dirty when wiping. What am I? Normally when you dry something, it becomes clean. And when you wipe something, it becomes clean. But this thing says, I get wet when drying, I get dirty when wiping. What am I? Yeah, you are right. It's a towel. When drying, it gets wet, and when wiping, it gets dirty. Okay, here's another object that says, I can be cracked, made, told, and played. What am I? I am a joke. Okay, in English, you can crack a joke, you can make a joke, you can tell a joke, you can play joke. So these are the idioms, English idioms that you can use with joke. Okay, I shrink smaller every time I take a bath. What am I? I shrink smaller means I get smaller in size every time I get a bath. So what am I? Yes, you are right, a soap. Because soap gets smaller every time you use it. Okay, I'm always around you but often forgotten. I'm pure and clean most time but occasionally rotten. What am I? You're right, air. Okay, I will disappear every time you say my name. What am I? Oh, this is really mysterious thing. When you say its name, it disappears. What is it? It's silence. So you break the silence when you utter its name. I run around the house but don't move. What am I? So this is something that runs around the house but doesn't move. So can you run around a house without moving? Yes, you can if you are a fence. Okay. I start with T, end with T, and within me is T. What am I? So this is something that starts with T, ends with T, and it contains T. I've given you an easier hint. Yeah, I am a teapot. A teapot starts with the letter T, it ends with the letter T, and of course it carries tea. It has a drink tea in it. Okay, I go up when the rain comes down. What am I? You're right, it's an umbrella. Okay. Now, these are some riddles. We move on and we go to some jokes. Okay, and again, you know, while understanding these jokes, you will be learning English, and you will be learning a lot of precious things about English, and you can actually use these jokes and such other jokes in your own classes as well. Okay, so the first joke is, why do cows have bells? Because their horns don't work. And what are the horns? Cows have horns on their heads, but we also have another horns in our vehicles, in the cars. When we blow them, they work, they produce sound. The cows also have horns, but they can't blow them. In fact, in the past, the horns that they used to blow in, they were actually horns of some animals. So the funny thing is that why do the cows wear bells? The funny side is because their horns don't work. They can't blow their horns, they can't produce sound with their horns. Now I'm not going to explain the jokes in such details because you see it will mar all fun in it. Normally it is unwise to explain a joke, but in English classes sometimes if you think that your students haven't understood the joke properly and they can't enjoy it, you can explain it, and that will improve their listening skills, and they would understand it better next time. Why shouldn't you put the letter M into the refrigerator? Because it turns ice into mice. Okay? Self-explanatory. We move on. What's the definition of a pessimist? A pessimist is a well-informed optimist. Maybe it's not funny for you, because in order to understand it, you will have to know what an optimist is and who is a pessimist. A pessimist is someone who always looks at the dark side of the picture. A pessimist is someone who always looks at the dark side of the reality, whereas an optimist is someone who always looks at the bright side of reality. Okay? Now, this is funny because it is interesting. Some people say a pessimist is a well-informed optimist. In other words, we say if you are well-informed about things, if you have information about things, then you will only be a pessimist, then you can't be an optimist. An optimist is only someone who is ignorant, who doesn't know something. Well, you don't have to agree with it, but it is interesting to twist the meaning of pessimist around. Why was the crab sent to prison? Because he kept pinching things. You know a crab? Right? It is a sea animal. It has got 2 claws in front of its head, and with these claws it pinches or it holds things. Another meaning of pinch is to steal, and we send people to jails for stealing. So in this joke you have a pun, because the word pinch has 2 meanings. One meaning of pinch is as you pinch like this. Another meaning of pinch is to steal something from someone's pocket. Okay, why are Saturday and Sunday strong days? Because they are not weekdays. And again, you know, we have a pun on the word week. W-E-A-K, week, is the opposite of strong, but weekdays are Saturday and Sundays. Okay, so these are some jokes. Let's continue and find more. Okay, here's another joke that I often use in my class, and this one is really interesting in order to teach indefinite pronouns. Pronouns that do not refer to a definite person. Maybe you also find it interesting and you would like to use it in your own classes. So this is a story about 4 people named everybody, somebody, anybody, and nobody. There was an important job to be done, and everybody was sure that somebody would do it. Anybody could have done it, but nobody did it. Somebody got angry about that because it was everybody's job. Everybody thought that anybody could do it, but nobody realized that everybody wouldn't do it. It ended up that everybody blamed somebody when nobody did what anybody could have done. Okay, so maybe you don't find it funny, but it is really mind-boggling. It is really confusing. And once if you can get your brain work around it, you will really understand how complex this somebody, everybody, nobody is in English. Okay, here's another joke. Capitalism or communism? What's the difference between capitalism and communism? Under capitalism, man exploits man. Under communism, it is exactly the opposite. Okay, so what's the opposite? Man exploits man? It doesn't really... So in other words, there is no real difference between capitalism and communism. In both systems, man exploits man. Maybe, once again, you agree with it or not, but it's just a funny way of looking at these two terms. Okay, now this is really interesting. One day a teacher was attempting to teach the names of animals to a class of 5-year-olds. She held up a picture of a deer and asked one boy, "Billy, what is this animal?" Little Billy looked at the picture with a disheartened look on his face and responded, "I'm sorry, Mrs. Smith, I don't know." The teacher was not one to give up easily, so she then asked Billy, "Well, Billy, what does your mommy call your daddy?" Little Billy's face suddenly brightened up, but then a confused look came over his face as he asked, "Mrs. Smith, is that really a pig?" Okay, all right. So you know the difference between a deer and a pig. But you know, through these jokes, there are very subtle areas of language that can be taught. And one reason why I chose jokes and riddles in particular for this functional English is because it's not merely laughing it away. It's not merely for bringing smiles on your faces. Actually, we can learn the subtle shades of meanings, the idiomatic use of language and puns, and sometimes we can also have a better look at a culture. In fact, as I was talking earlier, that understanding humor is difficult in other languages, not because of the language itself, but also because language is product of culture, and so is humor. What is funny in one culture might not be funny in another culture. So every culture has different things to laugh about, different things to smile about. So it is easy to appreciate jokes in another language if we understand the culture of that particular language. Language, as I said earlier, is the product of culture, and there are lots of things that would only make sense to us if we keep our eyes and ears open and we study the culture which produced that language. So if you want to be a good teacher, and even if you want to be a good learner in future, I would like you to watch comedies. One big good comedy that I would suggest, the British comedy that I would suggest is good for learning English, is Mind Your Language. Ever heard about it? It's a British comedy. It is a TV serial, and it used to be played on PTV as well, I remember. And it'll bring lots of laughters. It's about an English class in which there is one English teacher, Mr. Brown, and he tries to teach English to people who are from various nationalities. So in that class you have a French girl, you have an Italian, you have a Spanish, you have an Indian, you have a Pakistani, you have Japanese, a Chinese, and all of them with their different linguistic backgrounds and with their different cultural backgrounds are struggling to learn English language, and that's what makes it interesting. There are various episodes, and if you have access to the internet, you can download some episodes, and I would like you to watch it because it would not only entertain you, but this series would also make you learn lots of phrases in English. Actually, I have shown some clips of this Mind Your Language in my classes, and very often I use it in my functional English classes when I am not recording my lectures through a camera. Instead, I am talking to them directly, and after showing it to them, I ask them lots of questions. And I have always found it a fun way. Okay, now we've learned that jokes and riddles are a good way of for learning puns. The words that have dual meanings and both the meanings are valid in a context. One of them is usually funny. Similarly, it's great for teaching idioms. Now we look at two jokes here, and these jokes contain idioms in it. And in fact, you can think of, you can make your own jokes with English idioms in it. Okay. All right. Now, why did the boy throw the clock out the window? That's the question. The answer is to see if time really flies. Okay. In English we use the idiom, the time flies, time flies. Time flies means that time goes away quickly. Okay. What did the horses say to each other before they went to sleep? I guess it's time to hit the hay. This is an American idiom. To hit the hay means to go to bed. I think this dates back to the time when they used to have mattresses that were made of hay. But it is interesting in this joke because hay is dry grass, and hay is a fodder for horses, food for horses. So the question is, what did the horses say to each other before they went to sleep? I guess it's time to hit the hay. And this has dual meanings here, and one of the meanings is the literal meaning, another meaning is the idiomatic meaning. So you would see that in these two jokes you have two idioms in English, and you can use these idioms either literally or you according to their dictionary meaning, or you can use them idiomatically. And you can think of some idioms in English, and if you are an English teacher, next time you can make a joke by using that idiom both as an idiom, and also you can use it for its dictionary meaning. Okay, so we've got idioms, we've got puns that we can teach through jokes and riddles. Now, before we move on, can you summarize, can you tell me what kind of things, grammar points, can we teach through jokes and riddles? You are right. We can teach puns, we can teach idioms, we can teach spellings, we can teach vocabulary. In fact, there are lots of subtle aspects of language that usually go unconscious, and we can't directly teach it in the class, but they are part of our language understanding, and they must somehow be incorporated in our language classes. The best way to do that is putting it in the right context, in jokes and riddles. Otherwise, what happens is that we teach grammar, we have exercises, we have serious discussions in the class, but when you actually find out something funny, you can't appreciate it, you feel discouraged, because sometimes you feel that you feel frustrated that probably you are never going to learn the language, because if you can't appreciate a humor in a language, you can't really say that you have learnt that language. Okay, it's a tough task, it is challenging, but at the same time it is interesting, and so this is a fun way of learning language. Okay, so I hope that with these skills you would like to apply these skills in your own classes, and you will next time don't think that jokes are only for wasting times, and you would understand their instructional values, their teaching values. Okay, now we move on, and I want to give you a practice situation. Okay, so here is your first practice situation. share some jokes in English. I haven't given you a complete situation here, but sometimes you should share jokes in English with your colleagues, with your students even. I often ask my students to think of a joke. In fact, I give them a theme. So you have jokes related to food, you have jokes related to weather, you have jokes related to language, you have jokes that have idioms in it, you have jokes that have puns in it, you have jokes that have animals in it, and you have jokes about the parts of body. You have riddles. Similarly, you have riddles that involve persons, you have riddles that involve things. So what you can do is you can think of one particular theme and then search for jokes that are related to that theme, and then you can share those jokes with your colleagues. So it would be quite a task. You can research for jokes regarding a particular theme, and then you can ask your partner to research about the same theme, and then you can exchange, then you can share if you have got the same jokes or if you have got different jokes. Okay, the second task, normally in most of the cases it's not good to explain a joke, because a joke is to be appreciated. It is for entertainment. It is not for instruction. It's not for explanation. But when you are learning a language, sometimes you have to explain why a joke is funny, what makes it funny. In fact, I have done it in today's lecture. So you should have, probably by now you must have got an idea how to do that. You can explain the devices that have been used. You can explain the subtle points of grammar, subtle points of vocabulary, idioms, puns, and other subtle parts of language use that make it funny. And you can also explain the difference in culture, why something is funny in one culture and it's not funny at all in another culture. Or so in this way, you can make your students practice in English. You can also practice it with your colleagues, and I'm sure that you won't ignore this practice situation, and you would make full benefit out of it, and you would, in this way you can add to the collection of jokes that you have got. And in particular, if you search for language jokes on the net, you will find lots of jokes that are related to teaching and learning language. And if you start sharing them, you will learn lots of grammar aspects, vocabulary aspects, and underlying aspects that are not very direct, that are not usually taught in the classes. And this is how you will practice. And as I told you earlier, you should also watch humorous programs in English. You should listen to English programs in English. They will really help you improve your English. Even if you don't understand them, understand everything, you can understand 20%, 30%, but if you will keep on listening to the humorous texts, you will become proficient in it. Because what happens is, I know there are so many of my students who can understand news very well. They can understand cricket commentary very well. They can understand business news very well. And some of them can even understand when there are formal interviews on television, and there are some documentaries regarding some particular subjects. But most of them say that they can't understand why people are laughing, why something is so funny. When they watch movies, they miss the points why something is funny. I can't really overemphasize this aspect of language. Regardless of which language you are learning, it is important that you be entertained in that language, and you can understand the funny side of the language. Okay, now the third practice situation is you study these pictures, and I will also provide this practice situation through handout. I would like you to download a handout, this handout, and then you can look at these pictures. These pictures are numbered. You can study them, and then you can describe this picture in detail, and you can explain what's so funny about it. Or maybe you can find some other pictures that are funnier than this. Maybe this picture is not as funny as I wanted it to be, but you can think of, you can search for some such pictures, and then you can try to explain it in your own words. So the purpose is that you can explain something using natural, funny English. Okay, with this we come to the end of this lecture. Oh, you are back again. Here you are again.
Yes, I thought I should also tell you some jokes.
Oh, really? Have you got some jokes?
Yes, I've got some. In fact, I've got many.
Oh, please don't tell us so many jokes, because we don't have enough time left. We are just winding up our today's lecture.
Okay, maybe next time then.
All right, good. Maybe in future. We would love to listen to your jokes, and you are welcome to our program anytime you like. You can come.
Thank you very much.
Oh, you are welcome. How about your English? You said you are an American, so it must be pretty easy for you to appreciate jokes.
Yes, it is.
Okay, very well. And how about your English?
I'm good at it.
Okay, good. Now I'm going to ask you a question. As an English teacher, can you speak a sentence in English that has the following words in it: defeat, deduct, defense, and detail? I repeat. Can you use a sentence in English that has the words defeat, deduct, defense, and detail in it?
Sure, it is easy. The feet of the duck went over the fence before the tail.
Oh, come on. What did you say? Say that again.
I said, the feet of the duck went over the fence before the tail.
Oh, okay. You are pronouncing the as the?
Yes.
Okay, that's funny. Thank you very much for coming to our show. We don't have enough time left, so if you allow us, I want to wrap up today's lecture.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's look at the summary of today's lecture. In lecture number 18, we learned how to comprehend riddles. Riddles are like brain teasers, and it's important to understand such riddles in a foreign language, because they help increase our proficiency in that foreign language. Today we also read some funny texts. We met a character whose name is Funny, and although she was not really very funny, but she was trying to be funny. We also read some jokes, and we learned how to appreciate these jokes, and we tried to understand why something becomes funny and what are the subtle points of language that we can learn through jokes. We also learned how to use puns and idioms. And I wish that in future you will be able to appreciate puns and idioms, and you will be able to read English texts which are funny, and you will be able to solve certain riddles, and you will be able to create some riddles as well. Well, with this we come to the end of lecture number 18. I hope you really enjoyed today's lesson. If you didn't learn anything, you must have enjoyed quite a lot. But I'm sure that along with entertainment, you also learned something. Thank you very much.